Okay, thank you. Over to President, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood, President of the Democratic Labour Party, Barbados.
Good evening, everybody. How are you guys doing? You can do better than that. Come on. Thank you. Barbados independence. Okay. I am really privileged. I'm really happy to be here with you this evening. It's a real pleasure. I want to thank Marcy. I want to thank the DLP UK Branch. I want to say big thanks and welcome to the Mayor, Juliana, for being here with us. And I want to thank all of you, different school associations, different charities, for coming out this evening to hear me. It is interesting that I'm making this speech to you, Barbadians abroad, and also it's interesting that we are doing it here in Battersea. And I will explain the reason for that, because this area represents, if nothing, but change. This area is a symbol of change, and we will get to that, because what I'm going to really talk about is the fact the Democratic Labour Party and Barbados's need to change. Barrow's party and Barrow's country. Now, Battersea was once a power station producing a fifth of London's power in the Parliament, Buckingham Palace, communities around this area in the 1930s. Such a key landmark, and it's important to remember tomorrow as we celebrate Remembrance Day and today being Armistice Day. The RFA pilots used to use the plumes of the vapor from the chimneys to guide them home in the mist. And also, the enemy fighters used to use them as well. So no one actually destroyed Battersea Station during the war, and that's why it still remained. So really, it became a grade 2 listed building, and now, and you're probably wondering, why is he talking about this? Why is he talking about Battersea? Because there is always power in symbols. There's power in place, there's purpose in place. And that station and this area represents a renewal of London. Something that once was a power station is now a cultural hub, a center, a place for activity, arts, entertainment, hospitality. So as I said, change is constant. And therefore I'm more than honored to be doing this speech from this location today, because what I am going to talk about is change and the power of change. The power to change, but still remain grounded in your roots and still that outward face of what you were designed for and what you were designed and purpose to do. Now, so we can add the list of the things about change, and what I want to talk about today is the Democratic Labour Party and Barbados and the independence of Barbados. Because both of these projects, both the party and both the country, are ripe for a renewal, they're ripe for a rebirth. It is time for that change. Today I want to share with you a vision for a new independent Barbados. You're probably thinking, a new Barbados, what's wrong with the current one? Why not just dust off what we have and keep going? The short answer is no. That's it. The new Barbados that I envisage and that I would like to produce must be safe, it must be prosperous, it must work for all Barbadians. And importantly, it must work for a people who understand and know who they are. And they're grounded in their families and their communities, and that must be the anchor for the new Barbados in the world. A world that is changing quickly. We have climate change. It took me nearly an hour to get here. I had to walk because we have protests happening and marches around the conflict in Palestine and Gaza and Hamas and Israel. And in our own backyard in the Caribbean, we have Haiti barely managing as a state, while some of the most vulnerable women and girls are brutalized and raped by gangs. And we have an international community that is failing Haiti. We have a Caribbean, let us be realistic and be honest, because that's what I'm here to do, that is failing Haiti. We are failing our brothers and sisters in that region. And furthermore, we have the conflict of Guyana and Venezuela that is brewing, where Venezuela wants to pretty much take all of Guyana. And we have leadership in the Caribbean that is hedging. But what are you hedging about? There's no hedge there. And the question that we must ask ourselves as we look around the region, as we try to place Barbados within the context of the world, is are we going to fail Guyana too? We've already failed Haiti, and will we leave Guyana to the side? Because the reality is they're going to need our support, and at some points you have to choose a side. You have to decide that you're on the side of justice and the side of what is right. And that is always the right side and the right choice to make. So back to what I came here to talk about. Independence, Barbados, and a vision for this new independent Barbados. Because we must acknowledge that we cannot exist in splendid isolation in the Caribbean and the world. And you're probably thinking, how am I going to achieve this vision? You know, you've had promises, you've had islands off Barbados were promised to you. You've been promised the moon, the stars, and the sun, and everything in between. And the reality is I'm not here to promise you any of that. I'm here to make a commitment that this new country, this new Barbados, must be confident with itself. He or she must know who they are. It must be safe, prosperous, it must work. Yes, a Barbados that is working again, and anchored in family and community values. And I think that vision can be achieved by the Democratic Labour Party. And I'll explain to you why. Even if you aren't necessarily supporters of the Democratic Labour Party here today, I want you to understand at the end of the day, as president of the Democratic Labour Party, I'm president for all Barbadians, because that is what this job requires. My job is to represent the values of Barbados and to represent you in every single possible way that I can. Every time I speak, every time I articulate, every time I guide and lead my party, I am representing you because I am part of you, whether you are a member or whether you are not a member of this party. And I want you to understand there's a space and there's a place for you in the Democratic Labour Party. Because at the end of the day, to lead a country, I must lead all Barbadians, not just those who will support or vote for me. So this vision, but this particular vision is a vision that I want to articulate to you. It's a Democratic Labour Party vision. Because at the end of the day, I am still the leader of the Democratic Labour Party. And it has to be a vision supported by persons like yourself here in London and those at home in Barbados. Because the reality is we must wash away in our lifetime, and I make no bones about this, one of the most inept, incompetent, baseless, valueless, and probably corrupt governments in the history of Barbados. And you're probably thinking, is this the time for that kind of speech? Yes, it is. Because often we dance around things in our country, we do not speak power to truth, we do not speak directly to the issues that confront us as a people, and we like to brag about how Barbados is still great and we still have 100% literacy and we're doing so well. The reality is we're not. But until we confront where we are as a country and as a people, then we cannot grow, we cannot change, and that is the same for the Democratic Labour Party. A new Democratic Labour Party, a new Barbados. Let that sink in. The power of the two projects. To build one is to build the other. That isn't easy stuff. Because, as you would know, and some of you in my party may flinch when I say the words New Democratic Labour Party or New Barbados. No greater pain comes from an idea in politics that has to be given life. A midwife, or I guess in my case, a mid-husband, though I am not sure I would look so good in the dress. But on the most serious note, and I've said this before, the rebirth of Barbados is tied to the rebirth of the Democratic Labour Party and vice versa. And the reason is that the party was at the birth of the country. Barrow and Barrow's vision and DLP were at the center. They represent the cornerstone of Barbados. Whether people vote for the party or not, everybody acknowledges the historical relevance of that fact. So the two projects have been intimately tied from the beginning, from independence to now. And basically, all of Barbados' independence history dwells, it eats, sleeps, walks, drinks, plays, it runs around in the house that our Barrow built, the house that the Democratic Labour Party built. Modern Barbados and the DLP project were and are still somehow linked together. I believe this. I believe in a new Barbados. I believe in a new Democratic Labour Party, and I need you. I need all of you to help me with that project. Because let me explain. In 1955, when Barrow and the others left the Barbados Labour Party, everyone knows that story. But what few remember was Grantley Adams's viciousness over this perceived young upstart leaving the Barbados Labour Party. How dare he? No one left the Barbados Labour Party. People came to the Barbados Labour Party. Here, Barrow, this man coming back from England, World War II pilot, dashing, daring, and daring to challenge at that time the man that they call Moses. That's honestly, think about what that group of men, they were all probably in the late 30s, 40s, were experiencing. You're coming up literally against the titan of Barbadian and Caribbean politics. The man who had brought in first self-government, the man who was premier of the West Indies, and you're this little scrappy boy coming talking about you want to form the DLP and you have this new vision for Barbados. Listen, the attacks were relentless, they were vicious, and the reality is Barrow had the audacity and the feeling that he was somebody, that the people that he wanted to lead were somebody, and they needed a voice in Barbados. And that is what the DLP was formed to do. He created this new independent nation. He anchored it in free education, new jobs, a health service, a sense of nationhood and community, and put in us a sense of confidence and pride about who we were as a people. We never had to ask who we were. We never questioned who we were as Barbadians because we understood the independence project, we understood what Barrow was trying to do, and we understood the purpose of the Democratic Labour Party in that project. So for me, the Democratic Labour Party was not simply a political party, but a party having a moral duty. It had a duty to do things for the people of Barbados that went beyond mere politics, that went beyond that mere transaction of, yeah, I vote for you and you get me, you do things. There was something special about the relationship that Barrow established between the party and the people, that he believed that if he thought that this was good for Barbados, he will move mountain, rivers, anything, anybody to stand in his way of what he wanted to achieve for his people. And became, David Thompson used to say, Barbados is more than the economy, it's a society. And that is what the Democratic Labour Party is about. Family and community. The idea that we achieve together, we walk together, we grow together, and in simple terms, we leave no one behind. Because this boy here from Boscobel is somebody too, and could be somebody in Barbados, because we're all worth something. That is what the Independence Project was about, was creating that idea that we were somebody. We were people too. We were a great people. We could be somebody. That we could have aspirations, we could have dreams, and we can achieve them. That the boy who grew up in poverty could come to lead the Democratic Labour Party. That the boy who grew up with a single mother could lead the Democratic Labour Party. That is what the Democratic Labour Party was about. That is what the Barbadian dream has always been about. Whether you were here, whether you're in Barbados, that we all could do something great with our lives. That sense of purpose and that sense of confidence that today somehow seems to be lacking. And we're going to get to that. The good book tells us, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but to the interests of others. And its core, that is what the Democratic Labour Party is about. That value about being your brother or your sister's keeper. We're not robots. We're not QR codes. We're not numbers. We are people. And you people struggling, let's be honest with that, struggling to come to terms with our civilization. Struggling to come to terms with our civilization in this vast universe. The fact that you in this room, you're British, but you're Barbadian. Sometimes your Barbadianness will definitely override your Britishness. Sometimes your Britishness will not even come out. because you accept that you're Barbadian in this space and you treasure that, you capture that, you fight for that. Everything you articulate is done in a way to say, I am Barbadian, hear me in this space. Understand that that is what I am. There's a lot riding on that 166 square miles, that little rock that we have back there in the Atlantic. 300,000 people and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of you here, New York, Canada, all over the world, all abroad. And that's a lot to get to grips with. It's a lot that I had to get to grips with when I lived in London, because at the end of the day, you have this sense of your Barbadianness, but you're like, I'm in this vast global space with all these different people and accents and competing, and trying to be the best and trying to do it. But you're like, at the end of the day, you know that there was some sense of who you were as a Barbadian. And that, at its core, that the value of being your brothers and your sisters' keeper is what this party is about. We do not leave anyone by the roadside like the Good Samaritan. A story that represents breakdown and rebirth of family and community values. And I'm confident the majority of the Barbadians everywhere, and the persons in this room, the persons that will be watching online, share those same family and community values. I joined the Democratic Labour Party. Yes, by choice. That is key too. It was a conscious decision to join the party that represented those values of family and community for me. But even in joining the Democratic Labour Party, I realized something, and you know it too. Let's not fool ourselves, especially after the second defeat in 2022, election I ran in. The party became distant from the people, and it couldn't articulate the values of family and community to the people of Barbados. So the party could not connect its values to its projects. So oftentimes you're like, oh, the party had a lot of projects, and like, but people weren't getting it. But that's why they weren't getting it. Because when you remove your values, you become distant from them, how are the projects going to make sense? You're building schools, but what's the point of the building? The building has to be connected to values. Otherwise, the building is just mortar and bricks and galvanized and wires and cord. You build a new clinic, but what's the purpose of the clinic? What are you trying to do when you build a new clinic? How are you trying to shape the people that would be in that space? And that is what the party, I think, forgot. It forgot the values and it became distant from the people. And yeah, we forgot who we were. There's no point in not admitting that. That honesty is what will allow us to recapture who we were so that we can recapture government. We forgot who we were, and we forgot who the people were. Government isn't a laundry list of projects and this, and they can do this and that. Those things happen, manifestos, talk. It's about the people, and you have to remember it is about that service. So your energy plan has to connect to the people. For example, how does the BLP regime talk about renewable energy? But people, I'm always going to come back to that, people can't connect the solar panels on their houses to the grid. Makes no sense. How does the BLP regime talk about a nutrition policy for children? Yes, we want the kids to eat healthier and to eat better. But there's no plan for agriculture. So where's the food going to come from? So how are you connecting the people to the policy? You see the disconnect. So because you don't have a value, if you're not driven by a value system, because these days people like to talk about politics being valueless, and there's no place for religion or no place for spirituality or God in politics. You remove that. But when you remove that, what are you doing these things for? What is the end point of it if you are not trying to provide some form of relief for a person's existence, if you like, their temporal existence in this particular space? If you're not trying to provide housing and education and health and proper food, but then you have to connect that to where you are. So if I come and say, oh, I've got a fancy new nutrition policy, but I don't know where the food is coming from because I haven't talked to the farmers to decide how much pounds of potatoes or carrots or whatever I need to produce so that my fancy new nutrition policy makes sense, because then it all becomes connected into what? The community. Because if the farmer in the area, and there are 2 schools in the area, why would that school not be getting food from that farmer? Unless there's a disconnect. Because in your head, you've not thought about the people. Because in your head, you're like, I just want a new policy. But your policy has to make sense to those who have to experience it and live it. And you would think that's the first thing you would do. Look around, you have a school, check, who are the farmers? Can they provide the food for this new nutrition policy that I want? All of these things we have to think about and link up. You know, how does the current regime talk about education reform, but clearly not telling us what is the key issue that they're trying to reform? The reality is, we know most of our kids leaving primary school, high percentage, because sometimes the facts aren't clear because the ministry never releases them, but we know that maybe 30% probably cannot read and write properly when they leave primary school. So we know that 100% literacy rate, that's not anymore. We know 8 secondary schools produce most of the people. This is a horrible statistic that end up in jail. We know there's almost a catchment. So that means there's a problem in the communities from which those children are coming from. But what are we doing to correct it? Because we're not connecting the policy to the people. All these are things that we know. It's not like these things should surprise us about our country. The same with the model reform for constitutional and parliamentary reform. Backwards, half step, missteps. Empty. And it's empty. Because, and I said this at the Parliamentary Reform Commission, I'm like, what country are you trying to build? Why are we talking about reform if you've not told us and envisioned out the Barbados that you want so that the reform makes sense? Because if you're trying to build Barbados over there and you want your parliament to go over there, then we have to have certain corrections. So does that mean that we have first past the post? Does that mean that we allow some form of overseas representation? Because otherwise you get this kind of patchwork, this laundry list of random aimless policies being thrown out. You're almost trying to throw things at a wall to see what will stick. Because you've not connected it to the people and given it purpose. And that is what has always separated Barrow's Democratic Labour Party from the other parties. Because there was always this resounding big vision of where he saw Barbadian people and what he wanted for Barbadian people. So he wanted independence for Barbadian people. But independence was not the end. He wanted independence because he wanted to articulate that these people could form a civilization. But then how do you do that? A civilization that cannot teach itself is not a civilization. So what was the first thing he did? Free education. This is a reason. Think about this. This was not random, you know. This man was clever. It was not a random thing he did. And then he recognized, okay, I need to educate them. But if kids can't eat, well, that's a problem because you can't learn. So then he connected the free school meals program. And then he was like, okay, well, everybody can't have all the books. So I need to have a book. So everything was connected to create the whole person. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to feed your mind. I'm going to develop your communities. And that is what produced that independent generation of Barbadians who were strong, who were resilient, who were smart, who were clever, who could go anywhere in this world and walk into any job and be of excellence, because that is what he was trying to build. And that is what the Democratic Labour Party can build again, because that is part of the project. Policy has to go to people so that they can live out their lives in dignity and live out the value that binds them and all of us together, that value of family and community. The idea must be that with the DLP government that I lead, whether in London or in Barbados, as long as you are Barbadian, you will never walk alone. You will never be left to walk alone, because guiding value system for me and for any party, and for this party that I lead, and for anything that I lead, must be, you have to be your brother and your sister's keeper. You have to be your neighbor's keeper. And that is what the Democratic Labour Party is about. That is what I am about. I've said it before, and I will say it again. This Democratic Labour Party owes a debt of gratitude, and I wish he were here, to the General Secretary, Steve Blackett, because I could not be here talking about new DLP, new Barbados, had it not been for his courage to be the man standing following those two successive defeats. When the other side laughed, and that's pretty much for someone to turn out the lights because the DLP was supposed to be dead and done. And so with the DLP, they were trying to consign Barbados, Barbados, and realize I'm saying Barbados, Barbados. They were trying to consign Barbados, Barbados to the dustbin of history. Steve was there in the background, working diligently, working carefully to keep the machine, to keep the party going. And in that regard, we should also thank Verla de Pisa, and we should also thank Irene Sandiford Garner, because those women, those two women in particular, deserve our praise and their respect. They never walked away. They stood, they took the lashes, they took the jibes, they took everything on behalf of this great party. And I could not be here as leader of the Democratic Labour Party talking about this stuff had not it been for these particular three remarkable people. And in particular, I owe a great debt of gratitude to Steve and to Irene. In many ways, they ensured that there was a DLP for Barbados, and therefore there was a DLP for me. Now, the last 12 months have been tough. I've been through a lot personally. My life has been upended. Being a leader of a party means you have no, I guess you don't have any personal life. and rebuilding George Street physically, rebuilding branches, there's more to do. Improving the internal workings of the party, retreat for key members to help guide reform. I'm going to get back to Barbados in a few weeks. We're going to have a members forum of the rank and file so we can reflect on the party and where next, as we enter our next phase of public education, public engagement with our community connects initiative, candidate selection, I know you're all excited about that, policy development, and roll on. So, let me be honest with you, and that's what you can get from me. 2 successive defeats left the party hurting in a way that few understand. You know, people walk up to me, do this, do that. I'm like, what, how? Because in their heads, they're imagining the LP 1986. You know, the hype, Barbados come back, and, you know, they're imagining the Mirror speech. They're imagining those moments. The DLP of 1986 is not the DLP of 2018 or the DLP of 2022. There's much work to do in rebuilding the party, as there's much work to do in rebuilding the country. And part of the challenge that I set for myself is that if we can rebuild the party, we can demonstrate capacity to rebuild the country. I always that simple test. If I couldn't fix a few bathrooms and make the DLP headquarters functioning, how are you going to force me to do a multi-million regeneration project for schools? And I can't get one building due. So we had to start at home. We had to start focusing and doing the things that were necessary to get our house in order. Because if we can get our house in order, then we can get the other house in order, the bigger house. Now, you would think, and some believe that I came into public life to change up the DLP, to change up Barbados DLP. No, I did not. I did not come into public life to change the Democratic Labour Party. I came into public life to serve through the Democratic Labour Party and to serve the people of Barbados. I came into public life to shake up my country so it could serve the people of Barbados. And to tell anyone who told me Barbados couldn't do better, I would simply tell them, step aside, get out my way. Because if you don't feel it can do better, you need to move aside. Because I am going to make it better. Because that is my life's mission. That is what I believe that I've been put here in part to do. I know in my hearts of hearts, Barbados can be better, and it can be better with a strong, realize I'm going to use this word, disciplined Democratic Labour Party. But that requires change. It requires us connecting to our values, the Borough policy basics. The Borough basics, as my wife calls them at home: education, housing, jobs. We did it once. We did independence. Sometimes, I don't know, we forget we did independence. The Democratic Labour Party did independence. That was huge. We can look back at it now and think, yeah, it's 57. Oh, no, independence. But think about the time. Think about the uncertainty. Think about the world back then, and you have this group of young men who have never really governed. Or never really governed. And the people of Barbados saying, we trust you. Yeah, I like you. I like you. I like this lot of you. Two of them borrow and sleep here. And go on, do this. That was a phenomenal leap of faith between the people and him to do it, and he did not let them down. He did not fail. He did not stumble once. Not once. He kept the project going and he delivered for Barbados. We did it once. We transformed this country into a vibrant community, and we can do it again. I want a Democratic Labour Party government that makes Barbados better. As I said, it will not be easy. Barbados is not being, for me, as I said, the jibes, the cheers. You know, 1 minute they say, I don't know what I'm doing. They say, man, you know what you're doing. One of them get up in Parliament said that I should be biblically stoned for saying that the government was going to increase taxes. And you know what happened? The government increased taxes after the tax-free budget. But you bet, the taxes did go on. And you can brace yourself when the land valuations start. Because you're not evaluating land, I am sure, to carry down the prices. Because land, when you evaluate land, typically, what it is do, it's go up. And if it go up, what will happen? There are more taxes you go up here. So let's keep an eye on that one with the land valuation that they've been talking about. Next minute, just tell me, I'm a dictator. Guys be shutting down people. All this in 12 months, you know. I don't know how 1 minute, I know what I'm doing, next minute as a dictator. Lord can't help me. I don't know what else they can call me. Even to the point that some people tell me that my coffee drinking is a problem. I like coffee. That's one of my weaknesses. And you know, I think that there's y'all need to make up your own minds really. Because the reality is they will do what they have to do, and you can bet your bottom dollar it. I will do what I have to do. And I will do what I have to do as always in the best interest of this party and my country. Because those are the two things that guide me. Party and country. And country will come first. All the time. Every single time. I choose Barbados first because that's what Barrow did. He always chose Barbados first. Barrow could be anything. I am sure if Barrow wanted to be at the UN, he could have been. But he realized his job was Barbados. That was where the interest was. To deal and focus on Barbados. Now, all in all, I believe on the eve of Barbados' 57th year of independence, the party that gave independence to Barbados is on the right track for rebirth. I couldn't and I wouldn't even think about doing it alone. But we have so much more work to do. We have to grow our membership at least twice the amount that we have been. We have to fix the last set of branches that need fixing. We have to raise more funds. And we literally have to crank up the election engine to be ready for an election that will be impending in a couple of years. But we can't wait till then to be ready. We have to be ready ourselves now. Thanks to the General Secretary, the executive of the party. And remember I said the Democratic Labour Party rebirth is tied to Barbados' rebirth. I think the projects are interlinked. If we couldn't make our beloved George Street a place to go again, if I couldn't fix it, as I said, how could I have been trusted to fix schools and hospitals and clinics and roads? And you will be happy to know the young Dems are back. And we need more of that. We have to grow our party. And when people join our party, we have to welcome them to our party. Joining does not mean that those who've been there before have been pushed out or less love. It just means that we have more love in the space. We need new members, new blood in the party. But we do not turn our backs on the old, the tried, the tested, and the true that are in this room. We can do both things. Both things can be true. It is time to get back to government so that we can fight for the people of Barbados. It is all good speaking out on issues and people say you gotta talk with this and you gotta talk with that. But the reality is, righteous anger from an opposition is just righteous anger from an opposition. If we really want to help Barbadians, everywhere, we, all of us, need to put our heads down and work. Day, night, midday, day, night, work to win back the hearts and the minds of Barbadians so we can form the next government. But I'm going to give a little warning. As the next government, don't feel that I have some kind of blank check or I can say yes to everything, because I will not. Governing is about making tough choices, it's about making good choices, and sometimes I will have to say no to some of the very people in this room, some of the very people watching, some of our very members. I will have to say no because that is not good for Barbados and not good for everybody. And that's just part of governing. Can't tell everybody else. Sometimes, we get so caught up. We've helped to work for the win. I said, man, I met the Prime Minister. He tell me no. Why help he win? But sometimes good leadership requires that. And I want people to start understanding that from now. I want to set the tone for the type of leader and the type of person that I will lead and the way that I will lead. We're back to values that I will lead from. Because I'm not going to fool you. Because what you see here is what you're going to get there. It ain't going to change overnight. It's going to be the same. So sometimes as a party, we are going to have to say no to some things. Because that is how it works. The values that we have must inform the things that we do. This Barbados Labour Party regime appears to want to say yes to everything, but really nothing is happening. If a man keep all the time, they can book it. None of this will happen. There'll be nothing. They said, give me the vote and watch me. And we have watched them. We've watched them break every single promise. If anybody's honest with themselves, you need to appreciate that. There's nothing wrong with accepting that a party or somebody that you like ain't doing the job. They're just not doing the job. QH. Waiting times are up. You could wait for days in the accident emergency. In fact, the regime now tells you should self-diagnose and don't come to A&E. Education reform is in tatters. No one has a clue what direction education reform is in. They said Guyana is our brother, but they don't make it clear that Venezuela just can't take most of the land from Guyana. They say climate change and green energy, but pick a side. Why you want to like empower a side? If you care so much for the people, and they seem to always be on the wrong side. And every time our flight attendant, our Prime Minister speaks, she's never in Barbados long enough to know what is going on. She said, trust her. Trust her to do what? Anyone who knows me and know I'm brutally honest. Trust her to do what? More shambles, more false promises. I say sweep them out at the next election. And give me the vote. Listen to me. Give me the vote and work with me. And why are you watching me? Because we got enough work to do. Watch me? No, that happening. You will give me that vote and we will work together to build the new Barbados and the new Democratic Labour Party for you, your family in Barbados, your cousins, your brothers, your sisters, your aunt, your friend that you went high school with in primary school, just call every Sunday or whoever and talk all the gossip and spread all the information. Pastor Lindsay, y'all know more things down here in Barbados. Y'all know them first. That is what I will tell you. Give me the vote and work. Because that is what it requires. Anybody who tell you to do something and watch them, snake oil. Because that's not how real life works. You know from coming in this country, you know you can't just get somebody. It doesn't work like that. You know any achievement, anybody who's achieved anything has worked for it. Got to do some work. So, give you the vote and watch them. That's been an approach. Sometimes it's been transactional. Let's be real about that. But that's not what I'm about. Because when you give me the vote, we can work together. Not watch me or watch as they have silently burnt this country to the ground. Take tourism. Tourism has not recovered. Our main driver of economic development has not recovered post-COVID. While in our neighbors, their arrivals, Jamaica gone up by 6.7%, Grenada 3%, St. Martin 31%, Aruba 8%, Dominican Republic 18%. Barbados' arrivals, they showed a decline 13.7% in 2023 compared to where we were in 2029. All these countries are neighbors. So it can't be some random coincidence. Why are they doing well? Why are we not? And the one thing that we have that they don't have is a what? Barbados Labour Party government. That's it. Take the announcement about reforming land tax. Likely there'll probably be increases to land tax values by 80 to 100%, and then maybe government might lower taxes somewhere else just before the election, and then they'll brag about it. But you would not have gotten anything. All a big con, all snake oil. Because what we really need is proper tax reform and a proper tax system that does not juke out the eye of the poor and the middle classes. Now, I want you to imagine, and this might more be a nightmare than a good imagination, the current Barbados Labour Party regime. Just imagine this. Prime Minister departing for the United Nations, wherever she's going to depart to, as we're told. And furthermore, she has to depart because her commitment was to 2 terms in office. This is the 2nd term. So if she's true to her word, she cannot run again as Prime Minister because she needs to set the example, if she really wants the legacy of a Barrow, that you're honest to your word. And a lot of people forgot that when Barrow lost the first election after independence, history goes that there were some around him who told him, man, don't get this out, don't leave. People, I don't know if you've heard that story, don't leave. And Barrow said, what do you mean? I lost. I have to leave. And that set an example of how you deal with an election loss in Barbados. You do not fight up, you do not drag it out, you simply and honorably, when you have lost, because if the father of independence was big enough, when Barbadians said, yeah, you gave us independence, but we tell you no, get vote out, so they're going, all right, want to vote me out, and left. No fight up, no hanging on, no coups, nothing. And as simple as that was a powerful statement of how this new independent country was going to operate. Nelson Mandela did something very similar in South Africa. To set an example, because that first leader always has to set the example. And if the Prime Minister is true and honest to her word, she said 2 terms, and if you want to start entrench that behavior, she should leave after this. So let's imagine that she is. Well, we could end up with Kerry, Dugid. May sound like a joke, but it could be a nightmare for Barbados, because that could be our reality. Either of them, or somebody else. Santia, the current Minister of Education, Okay? And I say that to say we really need a new generation of Barbadians to lead this country. We need the generation that grew up in the 80s. My generation. It is time that we step up and we step into our place and take the leadership of our countries, our societies, our institutions, everything around us. I benefited, like all of my friends, from the policies of Barrow. We are Barrow's children. I am a Barrow child. Generations of people who were educated because of the plans and the work of that visionary. I want to be able to do the same for another generation of Barbadians. Our system should be there to benefit the many and not the few. Back in the 80s, big wars were a distant thing. Independence was done. Our country was going through growing pains. Crop over was born. Sugar was no longer king. Calypso's and art form was coming into its own. Newer secondary schools were being rolled out. Concord roared through our skies as a symbol of decadence for the super rich. The west coast of Barbados swaggered with old school colonial properties. Middle class Barbados was growing. The offshore sector was booming. We could vote. That was Barbados. Yet, we were questioning a little bit who we were as the US culture bore down on us. And this current generation experiences, and I can tell you because I lecture, they experience mental insecurities about identity, their place in the world, in a way that my mother or my grandmother and many of this room would have never, grappled with it. They are going through something very different and something very big. And it is something that we have to find a way to grapple with as leaders. And it's not something we're paying enough attention to, especially with our boys. Especially with our boys. Because you knew what life was, and you just got on with it. So however it was, you just got on with it. This generation, some things are different. Competing identities, competing senses of self, competing purposes of who they are, what they want to be, all of these things. There's a lot going on. The reality is we have more. We have more of everything, but we seem now to not know how to use it or not what to do with it. We have more freedom, more technology, more access to travel, more information, more music, more TV, more sex, more. What that was it. We have more of everything. We have more of everything, yet our communities and our families have been eroded to this kind of new individualism of more, driven by this imported US ideology and this US dream. And in many ways, the Barbados Civil Party seems to have bought onto that sense of pushing the individualism, pushing, if you like, that Thatcherite concept of self. Because it's about self. It's about you, doing good for you. All about you. You just do you. It's really, do you. But what about your communities? What about your families? What about your neighbors? What about your friends? How do you do for them? Because you can't live by yourself. Unless you plan to really put up some high walls. And then you've created your own gilded golden prison. If that's how you want to live, maybe. Right. But the majority of us, we want to live in communities. We want to be around people. That's why this room for. That's why you're here. Although some of them probably got brothers on their like Shane. But even in that, that's connection. Because you want to be here to grab up with anybody and see them and call your friend and get what she had on. Come on, you know it's true. Yes. Exactly. But that is important still. Because You're here to share in community, in this Barbadian community, in this Caribbean community. They're saying this black community. And that's important. That is so, so important, because those values, those communities, whether they're the physical ones, you know, I come from Liquid Village, I come from Boston Bell, I come from Black Rock. When every time that somebody in this room see me, just remind me, got to tell me where they come from in Barbados, because it's important for you. That's how you hold on to it. See what I'm telling you? Exactly. See, exactly. We could do a roll call in here, because there we go. Because that's your community. Whether you're physically there or not, you are still part of that community. The life cycle, the birth cycle, the death cycle. I bet you know who got children and who got grandchildren and who got married and who ain't get married and who passed for Harrison College or Queens and what did you ever. I bet you all y'all here know that information. You do. Because that's your community. Doesn't matter where you go, it does something, it holds you together. It strengthens you. Because that's where you can exist here in this environment. Because that community is still feeding you. But that community and those values have been weakened over the years. And I want us to be and to have that community and that family again, as DLP and as Barbados. And as you would say, tongue in cheek has got words. And we can disagree, but we can hold together. We can do that, but we cannot live on the past. We have to chart a future for what is new DLP and a new Barbados. Now, I just want to leave you with a few points. I recognize that Barbados is not necessarily working the way that it should. We all know that. I'm not going to get into details. We know that National Housing Corporation, there's a housing crisis. Saw in the papers last few days, people can't get their houses fixed. UDC and RDC don't have the materials. We know that there's a health crisis. Waiting times are up at our school, at hospitals. We know that the clinics don't even have basic materials. All of these are things. The economy is not working. We know that the statistics from the governor don't tell us all that is going on. But what we can do, what we have to recognize in building new DLP, new Barbados, it's not about old versus new. It's not government versus private. It's not about small versus big. It's not about have versus have-nots. Because what we have to do is build partnerships across all the country to provide prosperity for all Barbadians. And there are 5 things that a Democratic Labour Party government that I would lead would commit to. We will have to achieve economic growth and diversification for long-lasting and well-paid jobs. We have to make government work for Barbadians to make their life easier and prosperous. We have to build a flexible education system fit for every Barbadian to enable them to access local and global opportunities. And we have to embrace and meet people where they are, their talents, their identities in all forms. And we have to protect our environment. These are some of the key things that I think will allow the Democratic Labour Party to achieve its vision for a new Barbados. A new Democratic Labour Party for a new Barbados. You know, I'm going to end with this. I taught about Barbados, taught DLP, all that. Recently, the Barbados Labour Party regime has been talking about right-thinking Barbadians. I always say, you know what, who are these right-thinking Barbadians? Are we not right-thinking Barbadians in this room? Are we not right-thinking Barbadians who are watching online? Because, are we not right-thinking Barbadians because we want a country that is safe, where you can live out your Barbadian dream, where you can prosper, where you can be the best of who you are, where you can provide for your family? I commit to you all. I will do all in my power, as the good Lord gives me the strength, to do good on that promise of that commitment, that Barbados will be better again. I commit that we will form the next government of Barbados. My son deserves a better Barbados. Your child deserves a better Barbados. Your grandchildren deserve a better Barbados. The DLP stands at a place where rebuilding of this country is at the heart of the operations and what we do day in, day out. Just as we are currently rebuilding a stronger party to reposition the country. Therefore, a new Democratic Labour Party, a new Barbados, a strong Democratic Labour Party for a strong Barbados. Happy 57 independence. And